Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Marion City Council Budget Workshop for fiscal year 2024-2025. Today is March 27, 2024. And if you'd please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, we have roll call. Please show that Councilmember Cheney is absent today. Barry, Jim, I'm going to go ahead and just kick it right over to you guys to start us off.
Okay, this is our, I guess, opportunity to give some highlights for the projected FY25 next year's budget. For those who might be watching or listening or haven't sat through one of these before, just kind of a really quick overview. The city operates two funds. The general fund is our regular governmental operations, and the utility fund is the enterprise fund or the water and sewer. So things are split between water and sewer and general operations. Quick overview, no change to the current tax rate and no change to the water or sewer rates this year. So we've managed to balance things, keeping the current rates for everything. And I'd like to just turn it over to Barry, our treasurer, and let her kind of run through the highlights.
Okay, on the first page with all the words, it's, as Jim said, we're not raising the tax rate due to the assessment change. We are going to have a potential increase of about $265,000. County tax differentials based on what they have given us preliminary, along with the highway user revenue grant, that's the latest estimate. The utility funds, we're not changing the rates. Fund balance, we are planning to tap into that for park capital and general fund capital outlay. We cover our operating expenses with the revenue. And the same for the utility fund balance. We will need that for capital outlay. And we're going to finish off what we got for the ARPA funding. As of right now, we have about $300,000 left in general fund and about $1.6 million in utility fund, and that we should be able to use it all up next year, which is what we're supposed to do. So for the expenses, we were able to come up with the usual 3% salary increase for staff and a 3% COLA. The allocations between departments, city manager and treasurer will stay the same. We want to add a new police officer at mid-year, and we're anticipating full staffing in the police department, so that's really good. Water and sewer billing division employees, the billing division, we're splitting it 15 to general fund and 85% to better reflect the actuals. IT will remain split 80 and 20, and then we have 5 employees in the Public Works Department, and I'm adjusting their allocation again between streets and parks because we're spending more and more time in the parks, and we keep track of all of the labor that's spent in each area. It's the same block of money for all the guys, but how it's cut up varies from year to year, and I track it. And look, this is based on our latest estimates. We also want to add a part-time position to streets and parks, and then one new department in water so Kevin can get much more adequate staffing. The employee pension system rate is increasing slightly, about $24,000 over last year's budget. And the law enforcement's pension is increasing slightly by percentage, but if you compare the increase to last year's amended budget, it's huge, but we had a very much lower staff last year that got pension paid toward them. So that huge difference is just the difference between not having adequate staff and being fully staffed. And we're estimating a 10% increase for health insurance. You know, we never know what we're going to end up with. We've been, you know, pretty good at estimating it so far. So those are the highlights. Any questions?
The fund balance, is that all ARPA funds that's in the fund balance?
No, no. Fund balance is if our revenue exceeds our expenses, it goes into fund balance, and that's carried over from year to year to year, and we only draw from it for capital. Most years, we've had several years where we've actually contributed to fund balance rather than pulling it from, because we just didn't spend it all. So but 300,000 of that is ARPA funding, and 1.6 million in utility is ARPA funding.
And so we have to use that by law by the end of next year, is that the?
That's what they want us to do, and we have the projects for it.
Okay.
So
Just being square.
the next page compares FY24 to FY25. Some of the biggest differences, if you look at the difference in police revenue of 72,000, that was the body worn cameras grant, which we got, and we've gotten the money, and that's all done. And obviously, we're not doing it again next year, so that's why there's a $72,000 difference in police. There aren't any grants for parks lined up as of current thing. And then not much, public safety's budget down in the expenses is up because of full staffing. Streets is going up. And we'll get into the detail later why some of that's going up. Some of that is partly staffing, but there's a lot of, you'll see in the detail. And you'll notice a lot of the capital outlay is dropping because we're finishing off some of those big ARPA projects and won't have nearly as much next year. And for the utility fund, we're estimating revenues going up slightly. The interest income is going up because there is a large balance in that, and the rates are really good. And the down in the debt service and expenditures, that's going up because you pay more principal and less interest as the years go by, and we're just, the capital outlay is just reflecting our current projects. So, and the next page just shows fiscal year 25, showing that, you know, we were balancing, and lists really the same information that's on the first. This is all summary, so, because I'm sure you guys really want to know about the detail. So, and then the grid sheet that's turned sideways is just another view of the budget, but it will show you that we are fully funding operating expenses and then pulling in the fund balance for capital. That's just another way of viewing that. So now we go to the details. And under local revenue, we're expecting a slight increase. That increase is coming from that increase in assessed value that's kind of statewide and really crazy because there's really no new housing this year, but that's from the tax assessment increase. The corporate business tax, we hit over 150,000 the last 2 years, so we feel comfortable bumping that up. Tax penalty interest is usually around that amount. The state admission tax and is based on actuals, and then the state income tax is based on some county projections that they have put out. So they were saying they don't expect as much, but then you drop it down 4% and then move it back up 6%, and that's based on the actuals, that's where we think we'll land. And under county revenue, the top lines, those are all based on history of what we've brought in, and the road levy and tax differential are the current estimates from the county. Under local revenue for clerk, we don't get that many solicitor's licenses, so we just tweaked that a little bit. Zoning, we kept the same. And any questions on that page? Code enforcement, we kept the same, and Head Start rental income hasn't changed. For the police, the state police protection, I've got it 105,000. That's about what we're getting this year. Hopefully, that's going to start going up once we can start reporting to them that we are spending our budget. Because the last few years, it dropped because we weren't spending everything we budgeted because of lower staffing. And the rest of the income lines on police are pretty much staying steady. Under streets, the highway user fund is the latest amount from the state, which we got January 23rd. Under parks and recreation, the rental income has dropped slightly because some of that acreage that the farmer was using has now gone into park. So on the next page, under local revenue, I kept the interest income for the checking about the same as this year. We've already exceeded that this year, but we've got a lower balance because we spent a lot of ARPA money, and I don't always trust the rates. You know, they might start coming back down. So we're being conservative there. The police grant we had in FY24 was the body-worn cameras. Like I say, we don't have any anticipated grants right now for parks. And then down at the bottom, that's the budgeted use of fund balance we'll need to make the capital expenditures. So any questions on revenue?
Our total expenditures, our total operating revenue is down almost $2 million. And I assume that that's because of money that was, ARPA money that was spent on Roberts Mill. That was then the fund that went in that didn't go out?
No. Our revenue, part of the revenue, we had grants in FY24. That's 600,000 right there between the police grant and the parks grant. Part of that is grants. Yeah, we haven't really.
You're talking about the total operating revenues, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at just the
Yeah,
bottom,
that's-
the
that's-
bottom, very bottom line.
Oh,
The
that's,
ARPA, so we
and
are
that's the
spending-
ARPA too. Yeah.
Okay, so that's, right,
Yeah.
that's money
Yeah.
that's slated to be spent before the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
And
Current year, we planned for 4 million budgeted use of fund balance, and we're only planning for 2 because of the smaller amount of projects next year.
Right. Okay, for the expenditures, for mayor and council, we increased travel and a slight increase to legal, and that was the only changes we made there. Other than the salaries, which are reflecting the, for the rest of all of the departments, the salaries are reflecting that COLA. But Finance has really no significant change in, what we're operating under. Under city manager, we increased travel and training. And everything else was pretty much in line. Under IT, under software support, we've increased that because Dan has added more programs and we have more subscriptions and things, and they all go under that umbrella for general fund. So, and he's increased equipment slightly too, because our computers are getting older. The only significant change to the clerk's office is we've added 6,000 because it will be an election year. And there were virtually no changes to zoning.
Quick question on zoning, the travel, training, and education. I know, most of the planning commission went to the planning commission conference. Where, Mr. Parker, do you know where it is this coming year?
It's local.
Oh, it's local, so we won't be traveling? No problem.
That's why it's local.
Question answered.
Yeah, and, we did raise legal and planning and zoning by $500. We kept code enforcement the same. In economic development, we moved money from the line marked advertising to marketing initiative, mostly because Mish felt that was a better description of how that money was actually being spent. Because it's sponsorships and things like that to Chamber of Commerce, and he increased it slightly, but it's been moved to marketing initiative because it was felt that it really didn't belong under advertising, and that's really the only big change there.
Okay, I see there's $12,000 to the Main Street program. Is that, I guess, the city's contribution to the Main
Yes.
Street?
Okay. Under City Hall, there's an increase in other professional fees, and that is for the comprehensive plan consultant, which has been spread over 2 years. And we raised contractual under City Hall Annex based on mid-year actuals. There's more being spent there. And we really didn't change anything in Roberts Mill. The insurance numbers, we adjust slightly here and there because we get that bill in July and it's like, oh, this went up, that went down. It depends upon, how many things we have or don't have, or, we're usually pretty close. Going to police, you'll see that reflects the police officer starting in January, which is an addition. And the pension employer contribution is gone way up from the adjusted FY24 budget because we expect to be fully staffed. And that number was higher until the last budget amendment when we took the money that was not used, because we only spent 162 in pension this year. So we took the money that wasn't used, and that's when we did that budget amendment where we got all those additional one-time expense things. So the cost for the K-9 unit will drop to maintenance costs because we're making that expenditure this year. And travel and training is going up because we are anticipating to be fully staffed. The equipment purchase is dropping considerably because in FY24, there were the body-worn cameras. Gasoline is going up a bit. Police radios are dropping back down because we did use some pension money to buy, that was rearranged and bought the extra radios. Uniforms is going up for fully, being fully staffed, and contractual is dropping back down from FY24 because we're purchasing some programs, and this will just be some of the maintenance costs. So, any questions so far?
I had one question, Jim. On the, this actually goes back a couple pages, but on election for the clerk, does that include any kind of legal fees for the election? Or where would that come from?
So that's elect tech and the stipend for the Board of Elections.
Yeah, and renting the equipment.
And that's it.
But I don't think we include legal fees specific for the election, right? That still falls under
don't.
legal, right?
Okay.
Okay, police secretary, there was a half-year adjustment in 2024, and, which is why it appears to jump, but that was only in a half-year adjustment, so there's that. And crossing guard, there was also a half-year adjustment to add another crossing guard, but, so that would be the full yearly cost.
So that reflects the merit increase and the cost of living increase on top of the promotion that was given the previous year, I suppose. So about 6%.
Yeah, 3 with the COLA and then 3 with the regular
Yeah.
adjustment.
And then we go to streets. We've got materials are going up slightly. And maintenance and repairs is going up considerably. I think it's, in my notes I have where there's going to be some streetlight repairs. Carroll County is going to be painting lines on some streets and billing us because it's the year to do that. And there's also repairs to the shop building, which need to take place. Solid waste is going up 25,000. They raise the rates every year, and we're bumping that up too in case the county raises the per ton rate again. So they've been doing that the last few
Why is the
years.
maintenance and repairs doubling? Maintenance and repairs on streets, why is that doubling?
He's expecting, Carroll County will be painting lines on streets, and they bill us for that. There's a lot of streetlight repairs, and they're going to need to make some repairs to the shop building. I can get
Carroll
more,
County painting lines on the streets.
the curbs.
Oh, the curbs.
The curbs, yeah, sorry.
Is that our municipal curbs, not the state highway curbs, or is it the state highway curbs?
I believe they paint this just says Carroll County paint some, we'd have to check with Kevin on that, how that works, but Carroll County does bill us
Is it related
periodically
to like
for.
fire curbs and fire hydrants and stuff like that?
So the county paints center lines and edges on some of our streets.
Oh,
So most,
okay.
most of our streets aren't striped at all. But a few, like Baumgardner, for example, has some striping.
Ranyan.
So the county provides that service for us. We compensate them. We don't do that every year, so that's why it's a bump this year. We don't do that each year.
All right.
So,
I didn't understand. I didn't think we had any county streets in the in our city limits, so why would we be paying them for that?
Well,
But I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, we're good on painting the curbs and the stop bars
We
and
don't
and
paint,
things
we
like
don't paint
that,
the
but
lines down the middle of the street.
exactly, right.
Not by hand.
One more question before we leave streets. We have a street sweeping contract, I suppose, for $30,000. And this is a sore spot with me and many others, and particularly in the downtown community. But we very seldom see the street sweeper. How do we monitor whether the street sweeper comes or not? And the particularly irritating is that the day that the street sweeper is supposed to come, the police do a very efficient job of coming around and ticketing all the cars that are in the way, but the street sweeper never comes. So I don't know how do we check that and make sure how do we follow up and make sure we're getting our money's worth?
So we did have a couple months in a row this year that, over the winter, that the street sweeper didn't come. One was, I think there was a mechanical issue one month, and then they turned around when they started hitting snow and the road conditions were deteriorating. And then I think the following month, there was a forecast for substantial snow over the weekend that, had we received that level of snow, we wouldn't have gotten effective street sweeping. So the Public Works Director canceled it for that day, anticipating the snow.
I'm thinking
But,
of
but,
the week before last. I mean, they never showed up.
so they did.
Well, they
So-
must have missed York Street.
So
guess.
I noticed
Yeah, my
on
understanding
street
is it
sweeping
came out
day
that
this month that up on York Street, there were a number of parked cars. And I think that's a fairly frequent occurrence. So we ticket them, but the street sweeper still has to go around them. And they, to go, so one parking space is about 20 feet long. But the street sweeper misses about 40 or 45 feet to go around one car, because they don't run up right behind the car and then back up and swing around and then back up. So they just swing out around it, and it ends up being about 2 car lengths for every car that's parked there. So
This has been a problem since day one. And when is this contract due? Do you know? Is it come up soon, or is it indefinite, or what's the story?
I will take a look for that while we move on, and if we can
Okay,
circle
but
back to that.
The what point I'm trying to make is, when it's time to bid the street sweeping contract again, we would solve a lot of this problem by delaying the time that the street sweeping started. If we wait till 9 o'clock, instead of having it at 5:30, everybody'd be gone. So that's.
We can certainly consider that for our next.
I mean, we're wasting a lot of money, I think, because the streets are in terrible condition downtown, just absolutely terrible, so.
I will say, as you can see, that we've
That's
only,
just a pet peeve of mine, but I wanted to get it out. I figured it's the best time to talk about it while it's a line item on the budget, so.
how much is it each time they do come out? Because I see that
We've only
at the
spent
mid-year mark,
23.
we only spent 2,300.
Yeah. And then while you're thinking about that, the follow-on question of, don't they have if we miss a month because it snowed, and we miss the next month because it threatened to snow, does that mean we go 3 months without seeing the street sweeper?
Yes.
There's no alternate day we can?
So
Or
if
is
there's
that
an,
because of the
if there's
signage
an
and-
alternate day, everybody's parked on the street. I mean,
residents,
we can promote
It'd
it
just be a
and ask
waste.
people not to park on the streets, but we don't see a lot of success with that. And then we pay by the lane mile. So, whether there's a dozen cars or 30, we pay the same amount. So we don't get an effective street sweeping job when we do it days other than the third Monday. And I know that's questionable to some, even when it is on the third Monday.
The whole idea could be solved by a different approach. That's the only thing I'm getting at.
Sure.
I mean, I agree, and this delay in the start time. 5 a.m., nobody's left for work.
Everybody's home.
Yeah, 8
And
o'clock.
by 9 o'clock, everybody's gone.
You don't want to wait too late, because then people will be coming in to go to businesses or whatever. But yeah, at that hour of the morning, people are still in bed generally.
So anyway, that's my thoughts for that.
Okay. Moving on, to stormwater managements, we kept the same. Parks and Recreation, you'll see that labor's gone up, and that's due to a higher allocation of labor to reflect the actual amount of time the guys do spend working in the parks. And she's kept recreation events the same, materials and supplies up slightly. Down in maintenance and repairs, that includes pickleball lines on the tennis court, updating more field lights. There's a playground border, and there's, this is terrible, I can't read my own handwriting. More acreage to maintain, or more parks, more,
Yeah. Right, you're bringing Ballinger Park online, so there's obviously going to be maintenance costs with
Right.
that were not necessarily in
Right.
this budget.
right, so that's why the maintenance and repairs is going up. And mowing is, oh, okay, that's because that is, under mowing, there's more acreage to be mowed. So, any questions before we get to capital outlay?
On the mowing, I understand we're adding Bollinger Park, and there may be some mowing out there. But I would think the mowing at Bollinger Park would be minimal compared with our other parks, and I don't know, it's
There's actually a large
not,
area
not worth
of
talking
grass.
about. If we spend it, we spend it, we don't, I guess.
Does that include like mulching and stuff
They
like
have
that?
a large area at Ballinger that's grass where the trees are.
Well, I mean,
Oh, yeah, over on the 194 side, I've seen the bush hogs in there, yeah.
In there and
So
around on
that's
the
not,
other
and I know
side.
that that's not cheap.
Yeah,
all right,
That's on a track, on a big track skid loader.
I think it takes them almost 2 days.
I'm not gonna comment on it, because I've been out there, so
I'll show it to you.
Yeah, go out there, then come
I'll
back.
be out there the 6th.
Okay,
One too far, street sweeping is 1,166.22 a month. And the contract, it looks like, is ending June 30th, 2025, and then at the option of the city, and providing notice to them, we can extend for 2 one-year extensions, up to June 30th, 2027, if we choose to.
Well,
But the initial contract ends, June 30, 2025.
So not this
So-
year, but next year.
So up until December, they would have only came out twice?
That's what was the next question I was getting ready to ask, 'cause that's what it reads
Oh.
here.
No, they've certainly been out more than that, but I can follow up with Public Works Director to make sure, to see what months
I
they
can
did
see
and
where
didn't
we are
come,
right
but-
now.
Yeah.
2,300 spent
By December, yeah.
December, so July to December, that means
There-
what, 2?
May have been, let me see where we are at through March. We're only at, yeah, 3,500 through
So we've only
March.
paid for 3 street sweepings through,
Either that or they're getting
Yeah, that just means
really,
3, because they just did it
Right.
this last one.
yeah.
You know, the day will come, we will hire a part-time individual and pay them $30,000 to sweep our sweeps.
Also have to buy the equipment.
We've tried that one time, but we didn't have the right equipment, but nevertheless, that's just something that maybe we should kind of keep in the back of our mind.
Why do we have 30,000 budgeted for it?
So we also sweep the whole city at least once a year. So that's, I would imagine, the
When do we
difference
normally
between
do that?
the standard streets, the state highways monthly, and then I don't recall what week we usually try to get through the rest of the city.
Okay,
I don't think it's a consistent week each year.
okay.
Okay. Capital for general fund. We have debt service going up slightly because we're paying more principal, less interest. We have 22,000 in IT. That is to replace and upgrade all of the cameras. And it's some new, better kind of camera, and it's going to, I think, link them all. It sounded really good.
Get high definition and higher security.
Yes, yes.
Encryption.
And police vehicles are dropping because this year we have 4, because we had 2 that didn't come in time last year. So this year, or next year, we expect 2 more. Dropping the stormwater down to 60,000 for a project on Riffles Lane. You know, the 660 was ARPA money with a big project, the Roberts Mill. The $1 million in street projects is for the street portion of the Westview water main. And that will use up the remaining 300,000 or so that we have in ARPA. And then go to fund balance. 23,000, they would like to have a wood chipper. And they rented one, I think, for some project they did, and they were amazed at how much faster they got the job done, so now they would like to buy one. The vehicle is to replace truck number 6, and I believe it's got some type of vacuum truck or something. That's what the notes have. And then parks, the 25,000 is for a merry-go-round replacement, and then 640,000 is for the splash pad. And that was with the latest estimates they got for the larger square footage.
And what's the $580,000 increase under Parks outlay? Is that, what project is that?
It's the,
Going
it's
up,
the
going from
splash pad.
60,000. We gave it,
Oh.
we got rid of it at the store, what, up at Riffles Lane, but we took it back down there at the Parks
Splash pad.
capital outlay. We increased $580,000 from last year.
Okay, the park projects are just listed in individual lumps. That's not the same project. Last year we had this year we have 1.4 million, 60,000, 335,000, and 15.5 in parks projects. This year we only have 25 and 640. The lines, unless it's a project that's continuing, they're just different projects on the spreadsheet.
Before we move on from the capital stuff, just a quick heads up, we're still in the process of updating the capital improvement program to see which items were targeted for, FY25, if they're still viable or reasonable to pursue. So the capital numbers might be changing a little bit, but since we utilize fund balance for that rather than, our I'll say our regular income, our real estate revenue and income tax, it's just a matter of adjusting what we're going to take from fund balance to do those capital projects. But that's still going to change a little bit as we get that updated. So we hope to have the capital improvement program that'll be for FY25 through 30 now, rolling it forward each year as we do the budget. So the capital numbers might change a little bit, just so you're aware of that. And hopefully we will have that for you. It's not going to be in time for our meeting next Wednesday, but we'll email it out beforehand and have it ready for the May workshop to discuss it.
Going to the utility fund. We're raising the water service fee slightly based on what we've brought in the past 2 years. We're not, since we're not having the growth we had, we figure it's going to level out. We kept the late payment fees about the same. Standpipe rental has dropped slightly because there was a contract that did not get renewed. So that's dropped slightly. And it may come back, or they may do something else, but right now it's not on the, we don't have a contract for the one. Interest income, I have raised because there is a large balance in the utility fund. And we're,
Why did that go up 50%?
if you look at where we are currently this year, what we've earned in interest on the bank account, it's almost 200,000.
I got you. All right.
So,
Oh, I say, yeah, sure.
yeah, it's,
That makes sense then.
yes. And then we've also raised the sewer service fees based on previous years and tracking that. The budgeted use of fund balance we've put in, and that, again, just is there to cover the capital projects. So if we're ready to move on to the expenses for water. The salaries for water are up. We've, done a little bit of reallocation, and we do want to get Kevin another guy in water. And then down in travel, training, and education, we've increased that by 4,000 because I think it's a certification year. He needs to have more certifications done, so we're anticipating that. Maintenance and repairs is up slightly. And, yeah, there's really been no other real changes there from the current year's budget.
On the meters and the MXUs, it looks like we're only gonna be spending, only a quarter of that budget.
It depends. We put that in there as a contingency because you can have several meters fail. And we also, when we had the development, we definitely needed that much. But we were expecting, some of the meters are old and they like to have them available for,
What is water standpipe fund?
that is property tax we have to pay on the standpipe.
It's for the cell tower stuff.
Yeah, cell tower, yeah.
That's taxable, and we didn't, in some of our lease arrangements, we did not have the lessee responsible for those.
Can that be fixed down the road?
So I think the newer ones are addressing that.
Okay.
Moving on to sewer, materials and supplies is going up quite a bit. They're having to use more chemicals, and that's greatly, and the cost of those chemicals has greatly increased. So you can see at mid-year, we were almost to what we had budgeted. And
Almost makes you wonder if the request for 25 is enough.
it's 300,
Because we've already spent 191, so you're looking at
350.
380, and your FY25 request is only 350.
Right.
Okay.
I think part of the thing too is with the way the wastewater is more concentrated now, they're going through a lot of chemicals, trying
I
to
understand
find,
why, I'm not.
trying
I'm
to
not
find the
questioning that.
right
I'm
mix,
asking
and
if they budgeted for enough.
right, and I think once they find the right blend or whatever, I think they'll get it
To level it out.
stabilized. They're still,
I'm-
Well,
I'm
won't
assuming
the
Kevin knows what he's doing.
improvements we're making on the water removal help these numbers? I mean, that should improve. We're spending the dewatering of the sludge. It should improve the numbers that we're dealing with. I mean, I would think.
Except for that it used to be watered down.
Yeah.
So it was watered down, it didn't take as much of the chemical to fix it. Now that it's much more pure, it's gonna
Why
require
don't we leave it
stronger.
the way it was?
Yeah, because that was another
That-
problem, it
and
was
that's
too
what
much
the-
water.
And that's what they explained, was that part of it was that they're having to redo the chemical balance because of, we fixed the INI.
Fix the I&I problem, but then that created a different problem at the other end.
Chemicals, yeah.
So we're treating less water, but the water that's coming through needs to be treated more heavily because it doesn't have the clean water infiltrating into the system.
but I think once they get the belt filter press on too, I think that's going to help reduce
Well,
it.
there's always improvements that have to be made.
Yeah. And like you say, at the other end of that, the belt filter improvements will hopefully buy back some of that. So, I was just raising the question, I want to make sure they were covered because we've worked very hard to get to the point where we've made our permit, and let's not cut ourselves short after having that major accomplishment.
I know our Public Works Director is watching, so we'll make sure that we follow up on that.
I'm just, it makes sense in that regard. I just want to make sure that I don't want to see him get caught short on budget, that's all.
Right, and there's an increase in maintenance and repairs because we need to replace some aging equipment. And they're working on that.
DPW just advised that we spent more on chemicals this year, that we overdosed some periods trying to figure out the right balance for, for the,
As you get
I'll say, yeah,
refining his recipe as it.
more, less diluted flows that we're going through. So as Barry said, we think they've kind of got it stabilized at this point for what flows into the treatment plant.
And contractual is reflecting the hauling company we're paying, but that will eventually go back down too, because we've got 151,000 at mid-year, but then we're not budgeting 300,000 because once the belt filter press comes online, then we won't need the,
Won't need to be hauling it all that away.
all the hauling. And then interest expense drops, and that's because we're paying more in principal. And I guess we're ready to move to capital. Okay, debt service principal is going up as we pay down the loans. The 1.2 million capital outlay for water is for Westview Drive, replacing the water lines. And that's going to use up most of the ARPA money. There's, down there under sewer replacement, there's also like a West Baltimore Street, so between the two of those will kill off the ARPA money. The 575,000 in sewer equipment is a vacuum truck, and I can't really describe it.
Let's see, well, can be used for, also as a jetter to clean sewer lines,
Yeah.
as well as to do point excavations with hydraulic pressure. So we will, I believe, still keep the jetter trailer for areas that the larger vehicle won't be able to get into, but this should make quicker work of some of the
Yeah, I remember
sewer
Kevin
work
talking
that
about
they do.
Yeah, it's for a jet truck. It jets and it'll do test pits and
Right,
it'll
right.
do a whole bunch of stuff.
And then the 50,000 under sewer capital is for the Windy Hills Pumping Station rehab. That's all I have for the details.
So, can we go back to a topic that Jim had brought up? We're doing a 3% salary increase plus the COLA. We have like certain areas or certain employees that are getting raises before other people. There's an uneven thing happening. Have we done any of the studies on the other employees who are sitting around waiting? Because we're still, we're still not being fair to the other employees. If people are getting these excessive raises, then that seems to me that should cover, this other salary increase. I get the COLA, cost of living, sure. That could be across the board, but
Right. That's accurate. Outside of the realm of public safety, we haven't had, and really, we haven't commissioned a study there either, but we just know because of having to hire and fill positions and how competitive that's been, we know what the world around us is paying for police officers, just because we've had to fill vacancies.
over the past couple of years, they've come to
right,
us
and
several
they've-
times
right,
and asked
and
for these
we've-
raises, and
right.
we've given them to them.
Right, and we've made
So-
adjustments to try to be competitive to be able to attract and retain officers. But we have not done that for the rest of the city employees. That is correct. We have participated in a salary study for another municipality not too long ago and are hoping they are supposed to share the results of that with us. But aside from that, we really just have the MML information, which isn't always well reported by other municipalities, and it doesn't delve into like the details of the job description like a formal study would.
I know, we
So
have very different
Right, so,
positions depending on the
and
city.
even just, here within the county, when I call around informally and ask, what a certain person might be, or a certain position might be compensated at, or I respond to that, people, each town has like a different blends of duties. So, one town might have, the city manager might do human resources. Here, our city clerk does human resources. In another town, the clerk might also be in finance, and it's very hard to compare apples to apples without really getting into a study. And I know that's something that the former city manager, had hoped to do, many years, but never got the green light to do. And I did not ask for money to do that this year because we're also asking for money, hopefully, to bring on a consultant to update our comprehensive plan. I didn't think there'd be appetite to do both of those in the same fiscal year.
Maryland Municipal League historically has allowed municipal partners to partner with them in a salary survey. And I'm sure they still do that. I mean, I would think they would do that.
They
Why
do,
don't
and
we participate in that?
and we are participating in that. But it's not, the information isn't all that detailed, and if comparable municipalities may not be reporting into that, I'll say, database, we don't have a great, it's not the end all for comparison. I mean, we certainly can take a look at that, and I do hope to, but it doesn't go into the detail that a formal compensation study would do.
Well, Jim, I'd be happy to volunteer some time if you need
Okay.
help to
Okay.
do something. I just feel like we need to
Okay.
We need to do something.
reward the loyal employees for a change, just, they sit around and watch it happen around them. I mean, that's not fair.
I
And I'm
Would
not
love to-
expecting
would
an
love to
answer
look into
tonight,
that.
but
I
just,
mean,
yeah,
we-
if we could
we
do
would-
something, just think about it and
if,
just,
if we are able to do something, before the adoption of this budget, we would be looking, for this year without doing significant changes elsewhere, we would be looking at dipping into fund balance then for our day-to-day operation rather than just for capital, unless we start making cuts elsewhere. So I will admit I had hoped to, with the inflation rates that we've seen in recent years, and the fact that we tend to adopt our budget a little earlier than some of our neighbors, we did a 2.5% one year and 3% one year, and then we saw that inflation was 8% and 9%.
Right.
So we kind of did lose ground, and I was hoping to make up a little bit with another 3% COLA this year, but we're still not caught up, so to speak, with the inflation of the last few years.
Nobody in industry is caught up with the inflation rate. And that's the whole problem with the economy. So to try to keep pace with inflation, unless it's at 2% like the government intends, is not a goal that we should strive for.
And that's why we did 3% this year. To keep up or to catch up, we should have done more, but the concern was we couldn't make the numbers work. So with the 3% COLA and the usual 3% step increase, we could make the numbers work and basically let the departments, for the most part, get what they were asking for as far as additional staff, for the couple that we did bring on. But we couldn't, I didn't feel comfortable trying to do more because I don't want to dip into fund balance for our operating, budget.
Well, I've said this for 38 years. And I understand government's different than private industry, but I bet there's not 10% of the industries in Maryland that's offering their employees a 6% raise. So I think we're being very generous in what we're doing. And you can't, what people deserve and what the citizens can afford to pay for are two different things. And we've got to balance that. That's our responsibility to watch after the tax dollars that come in here and make sure we spend them prudently. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
The idea of that Judy just brought up about, well, some people ought to be getting a better raise than other people, and I agree with that 100%. And in industry, when I was controlling employee salaries for 15, 18 stores, we would have a merit fund. If it was a 3% merit fund, the manager would have that 3% times his total salaries, and that's how many dollars he could spend. And one person might get a 5% raise if he's doing a super job. Another person might get a 1% raise because he wasn't doing that great. Or maybe somebody wouldn't get anything. So if we would adapt a philosophy like that, which is, again, I've said this every budget session for the last 38 years, but that's just not the way it works in government, I understand. But that would be the practical solution for what you're saying right there.
well, yeah, partly.
And require the department heads to really evaluate their employees and reward the better performing employees accordingly. And, that's America, right? Work hard, get better. Anyway, that's my speech.
Yeah. Actually, I had a conversation with the city clerk not long ago about our evaluation process and the way it ranks things, as far as increases. And it's pretty much, everything's in 3% increments. Our pay scale chart is in 3% increments. I was toying with the idea of, well, maybe there should be something in between. And then I started thinking about, okay, well, how would we enact something like that? And, do we split it to 1.5% increments? And then somebody might get, who does exceed in a number of areas, but not everything, would get a little bit more than the 3%. But then to make, the Mayor Pro Tem's suggestion work, somebody else would have to get less.
If
And-
everybody is
and
an
that is the
aver-
way the private
if
sector works,
everybody is an
sure.
average employee, they ought to get 3%.
Right, right.
So if nobody does any better than anybody else, then we're doing fine.
Right. And, we're such a small staff that it's not like we have, dozens of people doing the same role. Largely, I mean, I'm sure even within, the streets role or the water role, there are people who have similar functions, but everybody's duties are a little bit different. So, we're not like a larger organization where we have 5 people doing the same job to really compare them, that, oh, this person's outperforming that one because everybody's role is a little bit different. So, I mean, it's certainly something we can explore a little bit, and, there's nothing that says we have to stick to the
Well,
exact same evaluation.
The thing that takes the edge off in this system is the COLA.
Right,
Again, that's an unknown thing in industry. You don't have COLAs in private industry, or very rarely. But in government, you do, so that
right.
allows you to compensate in difficult times.
And certainly when I was in the private sector, years that associates were given increases, it was based on how the company did that year. So if the company did really well, the increases, were, the percentages we could offer were greater than a year that the company didn't do so well. So, even though it was merit-based, it was merit-based, but then also performance of the overall company. And that was the pot of money that we had to use. So in a good year, we had a bigger pot to use. In a lean year, not so much. So, but I certainly get the point.
Yeah, we did the same thing, but it was through bonuses, I mean, through incentives. You'd measure different categories, and if they exceeded, they would get a bigger piece of the pie.
We can,
Hard to do that with a public works employee, though. That's the issue is it's hard to do that with a public works employee because a lot of times those employees are not doing a measurable function. So, it's one thing if you're trying to reward someone who's excelling in sales and bringing in
I don't know.
X number of dollars.
Factory production,
but,
stuff
you
like
know,
that, there's no measurement.
Right. How do you measure for a guy who is getting in and out of trenches, fixing, water meters and stuff like that?
Well, you evaluate the employee. I think every employee has measurable goals, or should have measurable goals. And, if one digs a hole better than another, I'm not talking about that. But what I'm talking about is the attitude. Is he 10 minutes late for work every morning? Or does he look like something a cat drug in when he comes to work in the morning? It has to do with attitude, it has to do with drive, it has to do with ambition and desire to complete his role as best he can. And maybe everybody's just average, and if everybody's just average, we're doing just right.
Perhaps they're all averaging to the same high average.
But I've been managing people for too long. Every employee should have a set of measurable goals every year, and that's how they should be evaluated. Not just department heads, every employee. And that's what a big part of what the department head does. That's what that person's responsibility is to come up with those criteria, to come up with those goals and assign them to the employees. You don't ask the employees, what are your goals? You say, these are your goals.
Further
But we
comments?
won't solve that tonight.
No.
No, we certainly will not. I just have one last question, and this is from a constituent that came to me. As I look at this budget under economic development, so the city pays the entire salary for the economic development director. Then the city kicks $12,000 to the Main Street program. I know that that Main Street gets at least $25,000 from the state of Maryland. Where is the accounting for, and I recognize that Main Street is a 50, is under the umbrella of the Community Foundation, becomes a 503c. So are those funds handled completely off budget, and where is the accounting for that?
Their Main Street funds have, other than our $12,000 donation we make to them,
There's no accounting?
there's
All right.
no accounting on our end for that.
Okay.
And you checked with,
So going forward, now that we have a board again, they are working on their operating procedures. So what I'm hoping we will come up with, or that advisory board will come up with, is essentially some function very similar to what we see here with the council, where each month they'll be able to review the financial activity that's gone on. The way Mish and I were just looking at financials from the Community Foundation earlier today, and the way that the information is provided, we have to request a lot more detail than is provided automatically from the foundation. So it's going to be not a huge effort, but we're going to have to take that, request that information on a regular basis, and break it out by, I would like to see it broken out by Main Street subcommittee, so that each committee chair can see how they're doing, for their committee budget. But the idea is that each committee develops their work plan, then they put price tags to those efforts. That gets rolled into a Main Street Advisory Board annual budget. And then each month, just like you see the financials for the city, the Main Street Board would see the activity, broken out by, revenue, expense, and each of the subcommittees, so that they can make sure that they're operating within the budget that they adopt. So, and the idea also is that the Main Street chairperson will report and update the mayor and council at least quarterly as to the, affairs of the Main Street organization. And that can include financial information as well. So the city then also can kind of keep tabs on the finances of Main Street, even though, as Barry said, that $12,000 goes to Main Street, and then it's up to the Main Street Board to direct how that money will be spent. So the operating rules or operating guidelines haven't been adopted yet. Mish has provided a draft for the advisory board members to review. I know a couple have already provided comments on it, but I was hoping, and this month's meeting was, today's meeting was canceled. The chair was under the weather, unfortunately. So hopefully we can get that rescheduled for later this month. But those operating rules were going to be one of the big agenda items to try to get that nailed down. Because right now, the committees are trying to do their activities, but the board still doesn't have like the rules by which they're supposed to function in place. So it's been kind of a bumpy start, I'll say. But I do see that, there is going to be some oversight, to the spending with Main Street, and then also regular reporting to the council.
answered my constituent's question.
Further comments, questions, concerns from council? Hearing none, Jim, was there anything else that you have for us for tonight?
I mean, we certainly can delve into the MML, compensation survey and see what we can glean from that over the next month or so.
Actually, that's been taken offline. That's unavailable to us.
Okay,
You said it's been taken off.
Yeah, it's offline temporarily.
gosh, first the classifieds, now this.
Classifieds are
Okay.
back.
Are they?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I guess we can't have it all. Okay. Okay. I'll reach out to, well, I'll see where the other municipalities are in their budget process, see what they've got posted. Again, it's kind of tough to do apples to apples because every town does things a little bit differently. But, I can take a look at, the municipalities that are the most comparable to us
I was gonna
in the
suggest
area.
that.
And,
Pick somebody close to
yeah.
us.
about the same population, same, Piedmont, Maryland area, and see what we can come up with.
Did you have further discussion for the 24, 25 tax rate constant yield? Or was it just going over that at the beginning? Because I do see it on the agenda, but I wasn't sure if you had more.
Oh,
On
that
or
was just maintaining the tax rate and what the additional revenue would be from that
Just
tax
making
rate.
sure there wasn't any more to that. Okay.
Do you want to make that clear to everybody, anybody who may be watching at home or picking this up on YouTube later on, understands what constant yield means, and that
Okay.
we're not
so,
raising
right.
anyone's taxes.
So, right, so the constant yield would be if the assessable base value of properties in Taneytown goes up and we maintain our same tax rate, we get more revenue. The state calls that, and it is, they refer to it as a tax increase. So it does generate more revenue because the assessed values of properties go up. So even if we don't change our tax rate, we get more money. So the constant yield would be, we would reduce our tax rate to bring in this exact same amount of revenue that we did the previous year, which I think is a little bit of a stretch to imagine that any organization can operate year after year and not increase revenue and still sustain itself. But
Inflation hits
but-
us just as hard
but
as it
that's
does
that's
them.
essentially what the constant yield, as far as real estate revenue, would suggest, that we do.
Right, we have to publish something in the paper.
Right, and we have to basically publish a
Months
notice that
before the
says,
meeting
we're
and-
generating more revenue, this is a tax increase, even though our tax rate is staying the same. So it could be either because assessed values of existing properties go up, or because we now have more properties that have been built or, developed within the city. It could be attributable to growth, and some years, a lot of it is attributable to growth. This year, we haven't seen the same level of growth we have for the last several years, so it's more that the state assessments, our part of the county was reassessed this year, and property values did go up, in our district, so. Sorry, that was a little more long-winded than it needed to be.
That was good.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Further comments, questions, concerns from council? We're all good to go then?
Yep, we've touched on everything on the agenda, so.
You need a motion to,
Or anything, right, in case I have a question, I can come find you. Okay.
motion to adjourn?
Yep, looking for a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Looking for a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Opposed to getting out. How about you?